Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mass Retirees Weekly Update. Today's Friday, June 14th. I'm Sean Duhamel. Thank you so much for joining with us and tuning in again this week. Now I have two main topics to update you on today. One is relative to the state budget, the fiscal year 25 budget, which is now before a House and Senate Conference Committee, as well as information pending or stemming from last Friday's U.S. Senate hearing on the Social Security windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. I have some new news to share with all of you on those topics. So let me talk about what's happening here in Massachusetts first. Now, as all of you I think know by now, there were some significant progress made on a couple of really important issues that our association has been focused on for quite some time. Those initiatives began when the governor filed her budget back in January. Governor Healey included language creating a special commission on the state and teacher cost of living adjustment, the COLA. This is a provision that was initiated by our organization at our request. The focus of the commission will be finding a new funding path forward and some innovative ways to address the long-standing problem of keeping up with inflation when it comes to the COLA and increasing the base and perhaps creating either the enhanced or senior COLA, as we have been referring to this as. In order to do this, we really need to get everybody together, same room, same place, same time, lay out all the facts and come up with a plan to move forward. And the only way to do that effectively, just as the case was back in 1996, the last time a major COLA reform was passed, we need to do it through a special commission. Our association would have a seat at the table through this commission. In addition to the governor including it in her budget, the House of Representatives also included it in its budget that it took up back in April. Now, when the House took up their budget, they included the COLA commission right in the House Ways and Means proposal. There was a second provision that was initiated by our association, filed as an amendment by State Representative John Lawn from Watertown, and all of the information regarding this is detailed in the July newsletter, which, by the way, is on its way to all of you right now. But that provision focused on the state basic life insurance benefit that is provided for state retirees and active state employees. As I think all of you know by now, the basic life insurance benefit has been set at $5,000 since 1985. So we're now on 39 years of the same benefit level, which is very long. The benefit is now antiquated. It does not cover end-of-life expenses such as funeral costs and so forth, which was what it was designed to do. So the amendment adopted by the House unanimously would increase the basic life insurance benefit over the next 2 fiscal years, starting with a $2,500 increase in FY25, which would bring the benefit up to $7,500. And then at the start of FY26, so a year from now, the benefit would increase to the full $10,000. So both of those provisions were included in the House budget. As we have explained previously, the state Senate chose not to take up those measures within its budget. And that's not a reflection on how the Senate views these items. There's a normal give and take between what the governor files, what the House takes up, and what the Senate takes up, that all of those different versions of the budget oftentimes are not the same. And those differences are worked out through what we refer to as a conference committee. In any major piece of legislation, whether it be the budget, a supplemental budget, major policy changes, it is almost always settled through a conference committee, which negotiates the differences between the House version of a bill and the Senate version of a bill. Now, that process is underway right now. What the Senate, however, did include within its version of the budget that the House did not have is the creation of a special task force on post-retirement work performed by public retirees. Now, this issue has received a lot of attention in recent months. The State Inspector General, as I think you know, released a report a few months ago alleging some abuse and some complications that exist with the current law that would require, or what the Inspector General is suggesting, requires some types of reforms. So the Senate has responded to that by creating a special commission. Similar to the COLA Commission, our association would have a seat at the table as part of that commission. Now, how everything comes out in the final version still remains to be seen. Now, if history is a guide, we anticipate that the conference committee will most likely report out a final version of the fiscal year 25 budget in either early, at the very latest, mid-July. Now, the reason why I say early to mid-July and not into August is the fact that as of now, the legislative rules require that the formal session for the full year ends on July 31st. So we're getting short on time, and the clock is ticking, and once the budget is approved by the House and the Senate and sent to Governor Healey, she then has 10 days in which to act on the budget. She can either approve the measures, she can veto certain measures, or she can send certain measures back to the legislature for correction, either changing the amount of the appropriation or changing the language that's used for a policy proposal. And all of those things remain to be seen, but the legislature needs time at the end of July to be able to address either veto overrides or corrective legislation that the governor may send back. And that is in addition to all of the other things, all of the really important things that the legislature has before it right now. This is somewhat of a unique session where we have many very important, really critical bills for the entire state, whether it be housing, hospital reform, environmental bills, economic development, the types of bills that we're focused on that I'm talking about today. There is a lot on the legislative plate and a very short amount of time remaining to address these issues. One of the things that is still sort of on the vine, so to speak, is legislation that we have been talking about for the past few months that was initiated by the governor earlier this year that would create certain reforms at the municipal level. Contained within that municipal bill is the creation of a third potential special commission, this time on retiree health insurance. And just like the other commissions, mass retirees would have a seat at that table. At this point in time, it's unclear if the legislature will be taking up the governor's municipal proposals this year, or if that is something that may have to be refiled and carry over into the next legislative session, which would begin in January of 2025. The conference committee is comprised of 3 members of the House and 3 members of the Senate. So it's House Ways and Means Chairman Aaron Michowitz, Vice Chairwoman Ann Margaret Ferrenti, and then ranking Republican on the House side on the Ways and Means Committee, Todd Smola. On the Senate side is Senate Ways and Means Chairman Mike Rodrigues, Senate Ways and Means Vice Chair Cindy Friedman, and the ranking Republican on the Senate side, State Senator Patrick O'Connor. All 6 conferees are friends and allies of our association. We have been in direct contact with all of their offices, urging them to support the provisions within the FY25 budget that pertain directly to mass retirees. If you live in their districts, we encourage you to do the same. Every little bit helps. Now, in terms of federal policy, as I mentioned at the outset, we are closely monitoring developments, ongoing developments in Washington, D.C. relative to the Social Security windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset, the so-called WEP GPO laws. As we reported to you last week, the U.S. Senate held a special field hearing in Columbus, Ohio, a week ago today, on June 7th, I believe the date was. That hearing was chaired by Ohio U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown, who is also the Senate chairman of the Subcommittee on Social Security. That subcommittee exists under the Senate Finance Committee umbrella. The Finance Committee is chaired by Senator Ron Wyden from Oregon, and the Subcommittee on Social Security rests under that umbrella of a committee. The hearing last week in Ohio was focused on the negative impact of the WEP GPO and the inherent unfairness of these 2 federal laws. 7 witnesses were called to testify at Friday's hearing. The link to last Friday's hearing is contained in today's email message. It's also contained on our Facebook page and on the massretirees.com website. All 7 witnesses did a fantastic job of detailing either the personal impact of WEP GPO on themselves or on the members of their respective organizations. And all 7 witnesses were also Ohio public retirees or current Ohio public employees. Ohio, just like Massachusetts, is one of the 7 states that is primarily impacted by WEP GPO. However, there are pockets of public retirees across all 50 states, as well as the District of Columbia, who are directly impacted by WEP GPO. So this isn't just restricted to Massachusetts and 6 other states. It involves everyone across the country to varying degrees. Now, nationally, 2/3 of all teachers and about 60% of police and firefighters are impacted by WEP GPO. And while time is well overdue for these issues to be finally resolved and dealt with by the U.S. Congress, the attention that continues to be brought to these issues through last week's hearing, the national press this generates, and the pressure that's being put on Congress, which, by the way, is an all-time high, is leading in the right direction. Eventually, these issues will be addressed in some manner. We don't know if it's going to be a full repeal ultimately, or if it will be some type of a reform that would put more money in current retirees' pockets and then fix these issues going forward to have a Social Security formula that truly reflects the amount of time, money, and contributions to Social Security while you were working in the private sector or through another job that was covered by Social Security at that time. Now, since last Friday's hearing, we've had 2 additional co-sponsors in the U.S. Senate sign on to Sherrod Brown's full repeal bill. This brings the total count to 59 U.S. senators now supporting the Senate version of full repeal. Now, I should throw some caution into the wind. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get to the magic number of 60 senators, which would be needed to bring a bill to the floor of the U.S. Senate. And it also doesn't mean that the ultimate resolution of this will be the passage of full repeal in the Senate. As a matter of fact, when Senator Wyden signed on to the bill, his public statement around this issue, while certainly indicating that WEP GPO are unfair and should be changed, he also made it clear that he does not support full repeal of these laws with no type of a replacement formula. As we heard at the hearing in April, both from the witnesses that testified at that hearing on Capitol Hill and from statements from the House leadership on this issue, they do not support returning to the old Social Security formula that was replaced by WEP GPO back in 1983. The reason why the WEP in particular was created now 41 years ago was to correct the overpayment that was taking place of public retirees at that time. And as we have explained, due to the nature of the Social Security formula and the weight that's given to retirees who are considered to be low-wage earners throughout their working career, it artificially inflated or increased Social Security benefits that used to be paid to public retirees prior to 1983. And that's what the WEP law was trying to adjust for and fix. Unfortunately, we all know that an overcorrection happened. Too much money has been taken away unfairly and unjustly from public retirees. But the senators, particularly Senator Wyden, and again in his comments, indicated that he does not support going back to another unfair situation where some retirees would be paid or receive a higher Social Security benefit than which they actually earned. This leads us to continue with our belief that we'll most likely see some type of a reform of these 2 laws rather than a full repeal. Full repeal would be our ultimate goal, but we're just not sure that we have the national support or the votes in either branch of Congress at the end of the day to get there. But something is going to happen. We're very confident of that. Again, this is long overdue. And the only reason that we continue to make progress on this is because of the work that's been put forth for many years by organizations like Mass Retirees, the countless groups across the country, and the individual retirees who are taking the initiative at the grassroots level to make sure their voices are being heard loud and clear. And the fact that we've had 3 public hearings in the last 5 or 6 months, there's a growing number of newspaper articles, most recently one just in the Boston Globe a few days ago about a Falmouth retiree living on Cape Cod who retired only to find out that her survivor Social Security benefit was all but eliminated because of the fact that she was receiving a public pension. You can find that story on the Mass Retiree's website, as well as a link to it in today's email message. So we're continuing to make progress. It's our sincere hope that we can finally get to the end zone on this issue sooner rather than later, but we're not going to give up. We're going to keep working on it. Finally, 2 final points. Next Friday, please look for a full update on what's inside the July Voice. As I mentioned earlier, the July newsletter has been mailed. It's on its way to members right now. I'm sure that many of you, by the time you watch this video or receive today's email message, you will have already received the newsletter in your mailbox. And it's chock full of all kinds of information, including 2 detailed reports on WEP GPO, one being our official congressional testimony related to the April hearing before the House, as well as a full analysis and report on what took place at that April hearing on April 16th. So with that, let me wish my dad, Hank, a happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all of the dads amongst our membership. The weather here in Massachusetts is supposed to be spectacular throughout this weekend, so please, I hope you all enjoy time with your children or your friends or your family or by yourselves. If you want to get out there and just spend some alone time, that can be a good thing too at times. But whatever you choose to do this weekend, I hope you enjoy it, and we'll be back to you again next Friday with a fresh update. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.